But until I turned 18, I would need a guardian. As Carver's only living relatives, you have the first right to guardianship. His parents' will expresses their hope that you would fulfill this role if needed.
That's preposterous. We're too old. We can't be expected to raise a teenager.
Especially not one with his particular needs. Surely there are social services for this sort of situation? I'm right here. I can hear you.
Don't be rude, Carver. Adults are talking.
I'll never forget the way Mr. Mung looked at them, with a mixture of disgust and disbelief. He explained that if they refused guardianship, I would enter the foster care system until my 18th birthday, which was still 8 months away. They didn't even hesitate before signing the papers relinquishing any responsibility for me. As we left the office, my grandmother had the audacity to pat my shoulder.
It's for the best, really. You wouldn't have been comfortable with us anyway.
I was placed with the Ramirez family, a kind-hearted couple who had fostered dozens of children over the years. I once believed that love could transcend everything: race, prejudice, hatred. My parents proved it was possible, even in a world determined to tear them apart. My name is Carver, and this is the story of how I lost the two people who loved me unconditionally, endured rejection from those who should have embraced me, and ultimately found my own path to justice. My father, William, was a brilliant engineer with kind eyes and a patient demeanor. My mother, Amara, was a professor whose laugh could fill an entire room with warmth. They met at a university fundraiser, fell madly in love, and married despite the disapproval that surrounded them. I was born 2 years later, their perfect blend, as my mother used to say. Our home was filled with books, music, and endless conversations about everything under the sun. Dad taught me to build model bridges that could hold impossible weights, while Mom introduced me to literary worlds with enthusiasm. They created a sanctuary for me, a place where my mixed heritage was celebrated rather than scrutinized. But outside our home, reality was different. My father's parents, Richard and Eleanor, never accepted my mother or me. The first time I remember meeting them, I was about 5 years old. We had gone to their sprawling colonial home for Christmas dinner, an annual attempt by my father to bridge the divide between his parents and his chosen family.
William, he's getting darker, isn't he? I had hoped he would favor your side more as he grew.
Children's skin tones often deepen as they develop, Eleanor. He's perfect exactly as he is.
Well, let's hope he at least inherited your intellect, William. Lord knows what else he got from the other side. Dad, that's enough. If you can't speak respectfully about my wife and son, we'll leave right now.
Well, don't let the door hit you on the way out. Because in this house, we speak the truth, and the truth is that their kind don't mix well with ours.
My parents exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. My mother's hand squeezed mine under the table, and I knew even then that she was teaching me strength through dignity. We stayed through that uncomfortable dinner, but I remember the car ride home was filled with Mom softly crying while Dad apologized over and over. As I grew older, these uncomfortable visits became less frequent. By the time I was 12, we would only see my grandparents at major holidays or family functions that couldn't be avoided. During one particularly tense Thanksgiving when I was 14, my grandfather cornered me alone in the hallway. You know, boy, you could pass for Italian or something if you tried. Why do you insist on wearing those urban clothes? Your father comes from a respectable family. You should try to honor that part of your heritage. These are just normal clothes, Grandpa. And I'm proud of all of my heritage. Both sides. Pride. That's the problem with you people. Always so proud when you should be grateful. What does that mean? It means that most Black people are lazy and ungrateful and also disrespectful. Those urban clothes make you look like a thug. I walked away, choking back tears. When I told my parents what happened on the drive home, my mother was furious, but my father seemed resigned. They're from a different time, Carver. It doesn't excuse it, but I keep hoping exposure to you will change them. You're too wonderful not to love.
Some people choose not to see what's right in front of them, baby. Their blindness doesn't diminish your light.
I held on to those words like a lifeline during every interaction with my grandparents. Their disapproval stung, but my parents' love was a shield that made me feel invincible. Then came the accident. A rainy night, a truck driver who'd fallen asleep at the wheel, and in an instant, both my parents were gone. I was 17, so close to adulthood, but still legally a child. In my grief, I was forced to face a terrifying reality. My only living relatives were the grandparents who had never wanted me in the first place. The day after the funeral, my father's lawyer requested a meeting with Richard and Eleanor. I sat there, still numb with grief, as Mr. Mung explained that my parents had left everything to me. Their modest but beautiful home, their savings, and a life insurance policy that would cover my college education. But until I turned 18, I would need a guardian. As Carver's only living relatives, you have the first right to guardianship. His parents' will expresses their hope that you would fulfill this role if needed.
That's preposterous. We're too old. We can't be expected to raise a teenager.
Especially not one with his particular needs. Surely there are social services for this sort of situation? I'm right here. I can hear you.
Don't be rude, Carver. Adults are talking.
I'll never forget the way Mr. Mung looked at them, with a mixture of disgust and disbelief. He explained that if they refused guardianship, I would enter the foster care system until my 18th birthday, which was still 8 months away. They didn't even hesitate before signing the papers relinquishing any responsibility for me. As we left the office, my grandmother had the audacity to pat my shoulder.
It's for the best, really. You wouldn't have been comfortable with us anyway.
I was placed with the Ramirez family, a kind-hearted couple who had fostered dozens of children over the years. They gave me space to grieve and stability during the most painful time of my life. But while I was adjusting to my new reality, my grandparents were moving into my parents' home, claiming they needed to maintain the property until I came of age. When I turned 18 and attempted to reclaim my inheritance, I discovered they had changed the locks and refused to leave. They argued that they had invested in maintenance and improvements and deserved compensation. Mr. Mung assured me we could fight them legally, but warned it would be a lengthy process. I decided to focus on my education instead. The life insurance money funded my pre-med studies, and I worked multiple jobs to support myself through medical school. By the time I was older, I had become one of the youngest cardiothoracic surgeons at Boston Memorial Hospital, specializing in high-risk procedures that few others could perform. Success became my revenge. Each achievement, each life I saved, felt like a tribute to my parents and a repudiation of my grandparents' low expectations. I barely thought about them anymore, having accepted that my parents' home and possessions were a small price to pay for freedom from their toxic presence. Then, on an otherwise ordinary day, they appeared in my office waiting room. My grandfather looked frail, years older than his actual age, while my grandmother maintained her rigid posture and judgmental gaze.
Carver, you look professional. Your father would be pleased.
What do you want? Can't grandparents visit their only grandson without an ulterior motive? In my experience with you two, no, I stared
We've had time to reflect, Carver. We regret not being there for you after your parents passed. We'd like to make amends.
at them, searching for sincerity and finding none. Before I could respond, my grandfather clutched his chest and began wheezing. Between labored breaths, he explained that he needed a specialized procedure, a transcatheter aortic valve replacement with a complex anatomical variation that few surgeons would attempt. Your colleague, Dr. Whitman, said you're the only one in the state who could perform it successfully. Our insurance won't cover the full cost, and we're not as financially secure as we once were.
What your grandfather is trying to say is that we need your help, Carver. We're family after all.
Family? That's rich, coming from you. Where was this family sentiment when I needed a home after losing my parents? People make mistakes. We were old, set in our ways. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive? As they spoke, a realization dawned on me. In all these years focused on my career, I had completely forgotten about my parents' house, the home they had lovingly built together, filled with their books, photographs, and memories. The home that, legally, still belonged to me. I'll do the surgery, on one condition. You need to sign a comprehensive liability waiver. A waiver? Is that really necessary between family? It's standard practice for high-risk procedures. Sign it, or find another surgeon. They signed without reading the fine print, a desperation that spoke volumes. I scheduled the surgery for the following week, telling myself I was simply doing my job. But as I prepared for the procedure, darker thoughts invaded my mind. I thought of my mother's tears, my father's futile hope that his parents would change, and my own loneliness in the foster system. The day of the surgery arrived. As my grandfather was placed under anesthesia, I stood over him, scalpel in hand, the ultimate power in my grasp. I performed the procedure exactly as required. I was a doctor, after all, bound by oath to do no harm. But when the time came to use the surgical instruments, I deliberately bypassed the sterilization verification protocol. The tools I used carried microscopic pathogens, nothing that would be immediately obvious, but enough to guarantee infection. The surgery itself was a technical success. My grandfather was discharged 3 days later, with instructions for follow-up care. Within a week, he was back in the emergency room with a raging infection. Sepsis set in rapidly, attacking his weakened heart and compromised immune system. I visited him in the ICU, maintaining my professional demeanor as I explained the complications to my grandmother.
This is your fault. You did this to him. We should never have trusted an animal like you.
Mrs. Wilson, infections are a known risk of any surgical procedure. Your husband signed a waiver acknowledging these risks. I'm sorry, but his advanced age makes fighting this infection particularly difficult. He died 3 days later, after hours of excruciating pain that no amount of morphine could fully mask. At his funeral, attended by barely a dozen people, my grandmother approached me with threats of legal action and accusations of misconduct.
I know what you did. I'll ruin your career. I'll tell everyone what kind of monster you are.
I performed a high-risk surgery that no one else would attempt. The waiver grandfather signed is legally binding. But that's not all we need to discuss, Grandma.
What are you talking about?
I want my house back, my parents' house. You have 30 days to vacate the property.
You can't do that. We've lived there for 13 years. We've made it our home.
It was never your home. It was my parents' home. And legally, it's mine. I've allowed you to live there rent-free only because I forgot about it while building my career. That oversight ends now. She fought me, of course, hired lawyers, claimed adverse possession, even tried to forge documents suggesting my father had promised them the house. But Mr. Mung had maintained meticulous records, and the legal battle was brief and decisive. On the day of the eviction, I stood across the street and watched as officers escorted my grandmother from the property. She screamed obscenities, claiming I was Satan's spawn, finally showing her true colors for all the neighbors to see.
You can't do this to me. I'm an old woman. Where am I supposed to go?
Ma'am, you need to vacate the premises as ordered by the court. Do you have someone you can call?
All our friends are dead. Our money is gone. He knows this. He's doing this to punish me.
I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. Within a month, I sold the house to a young interracial couple at well below market value. I didn't need the money. My surgical practice provided more than enough. What I needed was closure. My grandmother ended up in a state-funded nursing home, her Social Security barely covering the cost of her care. I sometimes wonder if she reflects on her choices, if she recognizes that her own prejudice and cruelty carved the path to her current circumstances. As for me, I established a scholarship in my parents' names for mixed-race students pursuing medical careers. Each year, I tell new recipients about William and Amara, about their love, their courage, and their belief that compassion should extend to everyone, regardless of background. Sometimes I think about what my parents would say about my actions. Would they be disappointed in my vengeance, or would they understand the justice in it? I'll never know. But I do know that in my operating room, saving lives day after day, I honor their memory in the way that matters most, by being the man they raised me to be, despite everything that tried to break me. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment.